All right, this is Algebra 1B, Part 2, Unit 1, Quadratic Functions and Equations, Lesson 6, Completing the Square. I want to remind you, before I get going, that you can use technology to help you verify or make sure you're getting the right answers. So please feel free to do so. I have an equation on the board, x squared minus 6x minus 27 equals 0. Remember, when we have it in the form equaling 0, everything on one side and 0 on the other, we can solve graphically by graphing the left side of the equation, and looking for x-intercepts. So y equals x squared minus 6x minus 27 gives me this parabola shape that crosses the x-axis twice. And I can clearly see that the answers are -3 and +9. Okay, you're still responsible for knowing the other techniques, but this is a technique that you can use to approximate or check your answers. That said, here are the steps for completing the square. I'm going to start by getting anything that doesn't have an x over to the other side. In this case, that's minus 27. So I'm going to do the opposite of minus 27. I'm going to add 27 to both sides of the equal sign, keeping balance in the equation. So x squared minus 6x equals 27. All right? And you're going to see shortly why I did that. Okay? It's going to allow the next step. So here's the thought process I go through now. Okay? I have x squared minus 6x on the left and 27 on the right. I think about that -6. In a perfect square, I need to think of a number that adds to itself to make -6. Think of a number that when I add it to itself makes -6. The answer is -3, because -3 plus -3 is -6. Now you might think, hey, that's just half. Yep, that's exactly correct. But it makes a little bit more sense to think of it as a number that adds to itself, because the next step is to think of what number is the product of those two numbers, of that number. So now I add the number to itself to get -6. To get the third number, the number that I'm going to add to both sides, I multiply that number by itself. -3 times -3, and -3 times -3 is +9. Okay, so let me review again what I just did. I think of a number that adds to itself to make -6, which is -3. -3 plus -3 is -6. And then to get the 9, I multiplied -3 by -3, right? Because the last term is the product, the multiplication of the two numbers. Now, equations require balance, so I just added 9 to the left side of the equation, so I need to add 9 to the right side of the equation. Okay, I add 9 to the right side of the equation. And what I've just done is I've made the left-hand side into a perfect square. I can now write this as x minus 3 squared on the left side. And on the right side, I can do 27 plus 9 to get 36. Okay? So these two steps are probably the trickiest. Getting the 27 to the other side is not too hard. But knowing what to add to both sides, what number adds to itself to make -6, multiply that number by itself to make 9, add 9 to both sides, making the left into a perfect square. X minus 3 squared. And let me just verify. You don't have to write this down. But x minus 3 squared means x minus 3 times x minus 3. X times x, distribute, is x squared. X times -3 is -3x. -3 times x is -3x. -3 times -3 is +9. Combine the two middle terms. X squared minus 6x plus 9. And you'll notice here, -3 times -3 is 9, just like we said. And -3 plus -3 is -6, just like we said. So the middle term is -3 plus -3. And the last term is -3 times -3. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense why it works out that way. It's kind of cool the way that works out. But now let's see what we've accomplished by doing that. By doing that, we now have reduced the equation to a single x, just an x right there, right? And we can now solve this by undoing in reverse order. This is quantity x minus 3 squared. So the last thing is squaring. So the opposite of squaring is square root. So we're going to take the square root. Now just a reminder, when you square root both sides, there are two roots, positive and negative, right? Positive and negative. Let me show another case here. Let's say x squared equals 9. X could be negative 3, or x could be positive 3, because negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9, as is 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, which is positive 9. So anytime you square root, there's two solutions, a positive one and a negative one. Okay? All right, so let's go on here. The square root of 36 is 6, and the square root of a square undoes itself. So this is x minus 3 equaling positive or negative 6. So negative 6 or x minus 3 equals positive 6. Two equations, because if we had a positive root or a negative root of 36. Okay? And now we're going to solve by undoing. Opposite of minus 3 is plus 3. Opposite of minus 3 is plus 3. And we get x equals negative 3, or x equals positive 9. And if you recall from our graph, that's what we got, negative 3 and positive 9. All right, so that's how to solve by completing the square. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Feel free to book a live lesson if you want more help.